2 of this one. So we're still on the Woodville Road here, cruising right along, 50 miles an hour, just above an idle, just above in the idle in the old 4.3 with the 833. I had a hard time with the fit of my NV 4500 in this truck. I didn't have a hard time fitting the transmission. I had a hard time fitting the transmission shifter and the 4-wheel drive shifter for the 208. I know that other people have made it work, but this truck is it's actually got a 79 cab, and the floor, it's got the higher hump, but this hump is still not as high. It's still not as high as the hump in the, it's not as high as the hump in the 81 and later cabs, making it really difficult to try to adapt and try to get things to fit. I mean, it could have been done, but I actually want to keep the truck somewhat original looking, and these 4-speed overdrives were very common up here in the state of Maine. I've probably seen thousands of these things. I mean, back in the mid-90s when I was truck shopping and these things were sitting on the lot, 3 out of 4 4-speed trucks usually had this. If it was a 6.2 diesel, it had this. If it was a 305, it had this. If it was a 6-cylinder, it was one or the other. If it was a 350 or a 454, it was usually a 465. But 6.2s, all 6.2s and 305s that I saw always had this. I think I saw one 6.2 diesel that had the SM465. I usually saw this tranny because it was much more common. It was more desirable because especially with something like this, you know, with 410 gears, you ain't gonna drive this truck 75 miles an hour down the highway with 410 gears without overdrive. It just ain't gonna happen, you know, unless you got big tires and maybe some super high revving engine. I haven't had time to make any videos. It's been a real busy year for me. I mean, I can't believe half this year's gone by. It's already summer, you know, and I ain't even made a video on this truck since fall. And I'm slowing right down and I'm staying in overdrive and we're walking right away. I had a lot of people say, oh, it's underpowered, it's underpowered. But these people never drove it, these people never rode in it. And I'm not trying to convince people that it's the most practical swath. But see, what happened with me is that this poor thing ended up sitting in my yard for 2 years. And she started to rust a little bit, and it was very depressing, it was very discouraging. I almost sold it for scrap price, which is a shame because I built this thing from the ground up. You know, and between the injection pump problems and then the 292 problems, I'd almost given up on it. And I really, you know, when my life started turning around, when my life started changing, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, about 7 years ago when my life really started changing, and I said, you know, I ought to just put a 4.3 in it and say, screw playing around with these other motors. And then every time I had a problem with that truck, every Saturday or Sunday morning, you'd see me at Napa. You know, in the morning, I'd be like, I should have just put a 4.3 in it and been done with it. You know, I went through that game with this truck for several years. And then finally, you know, after the last cavat, and I mean, I had 300 miles on that 292 and I'd completely given up on it. I'm a pretty damn good mechanic. I don't want to blow my own horn, but anybody who knows me will tell you. I mean, I'm one of the best here. I'm one of the best mechanics around here. And I'm not one to blow my own horn. Other people around here would say the same thing. I could not make that motor run right. I had somebody else build it for me because I just didn't have time. I give them a $10,000 toolbox, run up about $6,500 in credit card bills, and didn't pay my rent for 4 months just so I could pay that guy to build that motor. And it kind of screwed me over. Yeah, this thing kind of rides rough. I've done a lot to try to smoothen it out. That is the one thing I do miss about, like when I had the 6.2 diesel in it. I've put half-ton springs in it to lighten it up. In the front, I want to put half-ton rear springs in. I found out that I have to get them for a 89 to 91 half-ton Suburban, because it's a 56-inch spring, 26 to center, front to center, and 30 center to rear. Gonna cost me about 400 bucks. My money's tight right now, so I've been dealing with it. One thing I did to help soften it up a little bit was when I put the new tires on it, I went with the 4-ply instead of a 10-ply. I don't haul anything with this. This is what I do with this truck. I drive it down the road. This is it. I mean, I drive it on back roads too, but I guess I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with nails, rocks, whatever. I don't have a problem with it. I know the roads I go on. There's only certain roads I go on and I know them, so I'm not running over anything. I have not had a flat tire with this truck, period. Wish I could say the same for my car. It's just sitting in my dooryard with 4 flat tires. But there's a real bad frost heave up here. It's a culvert actually. It's one that I almost have to come, with this truck I almost have to come to a complete stop. One of the things my Avalanche has on this one, it's got a little more give over these bumps, but this is a little better on gas than my Avalanche. I can go 3 days on a $20 bill in this, where my Avalanche I can only go a day and a half to 2. So it's, and it's quicker. This truck is actually quicker than my 5.3 and my Avalanche. Plus, it's a little easier to get around with. I'm not really sure why, but it seems to be more nimble. Even though I think they have about the same wheelbase, but I don't know. I think maybe this Dana 60 has a sharper. This is the one right here. I slow right down, fucker. Right down to first gear. There. Anything over 7 miles an hour, that thing's ignorant. Once in a while I get that little cutout. I'm not really sure if it's throttle position sensor or fuel pump or what. I can't really throw any more parts at it, so I just deal with it. It's done it for a while and it hasn't left me anywhere. I've been all over the state with this thing. Literally. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I drove 300 miles to get it back bumper. Last week, I drove 150 miles to get 4 tires for my Avalanche. So, I mean, back in November, I drove, what did I drive in November? In November, I drove 500 miles to deliver a transmission I sold. Guy couldn't believe it. Most of the guys can't believe I drive this thing down the highway 80 miles an hour. So, well, she don't mind it. She don't mind it a bit. Open up the hood, they see the motor, and one guy, it blew his mind. He couldn't believe it. I said, oh yeah. I said, she does a good job. She does everything you need to do with this thing. I think they should have built it this way. Myself. But, I guess there's reasons they don't. And I know my reason. Basically with me, I built the truck from the ground up, and basically what happened with me is I no longer had a need for a big V8 powered truck. I needed something smaller and more practical. But basically it wasn't so much the truck was too big, the motor was too big.